All right, everybody, this is the video for making the case for the tunnel book. So I kept my tunnel book underweight overnight just to kind of keep it flat, but you can see it still has a lot of springiness to it. And it's pretty straight, so that's good. It's not got the ripples that sometimes happen. So now we're gonna make the case. So I'm gonna set the tunnel book to the side, and these are my extra pieces that I might use for the cover. I'm not sure. I'm thinking about doing something with that or with these. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. So I'm going to grab all my pieces for the cover. So this is the book cloth. This is the spine piece. We're actually going to start with that. This is the end sheet or the paste down for the inside of the book. These are the boards, and this is the cover pieces. So these are a little bit confusing when we get there. You want to make sure that you're putting it on like this because there'll be book cloth overlapping, and then we're going to put it on like this because we want to be able to turn it in. If you try to do it this way, this is what a lot of people do because it looks like the board, it's not going to fit. You don't have enough to turn in at the top and the bottom. And the grain direction is wrong. So this is actually the way that this one goes on. So just be aware of that when we get there. I mean, when we get there, we'll do it and you'll see it, but it's just something that confuses people a little bit. Okay, so let's, let me think, I guess I'll do an inset. I've shown you guys that before, but I'm gonna go ahead, I'll do another one. And I think I'll just, maybe I'll do this size inset, like this size circle, a little bit bigger than this circle so that I can peel that out and that'll be what I do. So I'll find my circle cutter and I will just go ahead and put the circle cutter into that measurement and then go outside of it just a tiny bit. So if I set it just like 1/8 of an inch outside that circle, maybe not even 1/8, like 1/16. That's just a little bit bigger than the inset. And then, so when I make the inset, what I'm talking about is this, it'll be slightly larger than the circle. If I really needed to, I could always trim that down a little bit. But I'm not going to do that. Not right now, at least. So, I mean, I could kind of just randomly place this, and maybe I will this time, but you can, of course, as always, you know, find the center of the board, make your little tick marks, and, you know, put the circle right in the middle. But because I'm going to have a little bit of book cloth showing, I'm thinking I really don't want to have it centered. So I'm kind of going to just eyeball it, put it on. So I think I'm going to make the center here. And before I start to cut, I can kind of see where that's going to be. Move it over just a little bit. Yeah. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. So with a circle, I'm going to cut. I'm going to go around 4 times. But I can't push as hard as I do with a knife anyway because this blade just, it's not the same. So that kind of pulled in a little bit. I have a tendency, and I'm coming around that final curve to pull it a little bit. So I'm trying not to do that. This is my 3rd time around. This is my 4th. I just don't want to cut all the way through, which I almost did. I could feel it a little bit that I was coming to the end there, but I didn't. And now I'm just going to peel it out. Sometimes with a circle, I'll cut it in half. Because there's not a corner to pull up and it's a little bit hard to get it. So sometimes I do that so I can peel. Ow. Get my fingernail back. I'm pulling out too much material. Wow, I really did almost pull up too much, almost cut all the way through. This is a real thin board, so I think it's pretty easy to do that. I mean, I'm all right, but it's just barely okay. This will be the side that gets backed with this end sheet because it's the cover. So I can kind of reinforce it with that. So it'll be all right, but yeah, just be careful about that. Try not to make the mistake I did, which is cut too much material. I'm just looking all around to see that the edges look similar in depth. And I kind of just feel it. Feels a little high on this side. Peel out some material. And this is, again, this is one of those things, you don't have to do this on every book, but we learned it on the last one. So I thought, I'll do it. It's a little weird right there, but. It's a little high on this side now. I'm not going to keep peeling. That's good enough. I'm going to stop because if I keep going, it's just going to make it pull all the way through. So we're going to stop there. All right, put this stuff to the side. Now today we are going to use glue. So I've got my glue sitting out. Okay, so this is going to be the cover. This is going to be where I put it. And this is going to be my book cloth here. Okay, so that's ready. I'm going to set that to the side while I work on the spine. So now we've got to take one of these. It doesn't really matter which one. I think I'll use this one because it's cleaner. This one's going to get trimmed down for the inside. I've got to glue up this piece, the spine piece, and I'm going to glue it, and then I'm going to put it inside here. And then we're going to attach our boards to this as well, just at this width of the cloth that's remaining. And then we're going to turn this over and start covering the boards. But the first step is to just glue up this piece of spine material. Set this to the side too, so it won't accidentally get glue on it. So you just need a piece of scrap paper. And you need your glue brush. So I had mine soaking in water because I was using it the other day. So I'm just going to wring out the water. So I just have a cloth and I'm just basically just squeezing it out, making sure there's just not a lot of water in there. And then I can open my glue. Okay, so here's my little strip. And I'm just going to glue it up. Just hold on to it and glue, kind of pull it away from you, and then switch and pull it this way. And then I'm just going to put this as well as I can into the center of this cloth. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to trim this once we put the boards on. Here, I might take my bone folder and give it a once over. So you can see too that this cloth is very translucent. It's kind of a pain actually, but that's the deal. That's what it is. Okay, so now I'm going to attach my boards. So what I want to do now, this side, I need to make sure that that's face down when I do it because this is going to be the front like that. So what I need to do is I really need to allow for the width of the board. And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll just put the board up against it and then make a little mark at the distance. See if you can see that at the distance away. So that gives me a sense of where the board needs to go. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm putting it real flush up against the spine. And then I just take my pencil and really at a pretty steep angle, I go in and make a mark. Oop, that one wasn't good. I think it was puffing out a little bit. So you're going to have to hold it snug. I mean, I'll be honest with you. What I usually do is I just kind of look at the board and then I kind of eyeball it. I mean, that's the truth. That's what I do. But if you need that guidance, it's helpful. So I would say this is going to be about a 1/16 of an inch away from the spine piece. So I'm going to leave a little gap like that. If you guys can see that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue up the edge of the board, and I'm going to do it, you know, probably about that wide. I'm going to glue a little strip like this so that when I lay that down, it's all glued. So the way I'm going to do that is like this. Just take my glue and then just pull the glue across it like that. And if I overlap the book cloth a little bit, that's probably not a bad thing, but I don't want it to get real messy. So you can see I'm kind of going over it a few times to make it thin. And then I can put this down. So here I need to line it up head and tail so it's even. They should be the same height. And then I just want to make sure it's straight all the way down and even like that. Okay, so that's that. Now I'm going to come over to the other side, give that a light bone fold. So you can see like the material darker and lighter kind of shows, you know, not the greatest. So you could do some, oh yeah, see where I cut through that board? I'm glad I'm going to be putting something on the back of that. What was I saying? Oh yeah, the light color. You could also cover a board with like Mohawk or something if you needed to make it light as well, and then at least it would be consistent. And that's what I do sometimes when I'm doing a project for an edition, is I'll do that. Okay, so then the other board, same thing. I'm gonna glue up the edge, just like I did. And so when I dip into my glue, I don't know if you guys can see that, but I'm kind of tapping it on the side because I don't want a whole lot of glue on my brush. So then I can brush it on. And so if you bought one of those little bottles of glue, I would get a little bowl or a plate or something, maybe one that you got from like a thrift store that you don't eat out of, and use that to pour the glue in, because it's kind of hard to put a brush into that little container, that little bottle. And then I'm trying to match the two sides as closely as possible. Okay. And if I wasn't doing a video, I would probably take a few minutes, put this under a weight, put some wax paper, on it, and then put my board and weight on it for maybe even just like 10 minutes would be good, because it would be a little bit better to do. But I'm going to go ahead and just go to the next step. But you might want to pause this, come back, let this dry for 10 minutes, come back and do the next steps. Oh, you know what? Actually, no, not yet. Sorry. Because I forgot to do the turn in. We need to do the turn in, and then we could let it dry. So let's do that real quick. Let me show you. Sorry about that. Got ahead of myself. So I'm going to glue the top and the bottom here. I'm already thinking ahead about trimming it, and I got ahead of myself. So we do want to do the turn in first. So we're gonna glue this. So glue the head and tail. Maybe we'll just do them one at a time because it's a little bit messy to do them both at the same time. So I'm gluing and I'm kind of pouncing it up against the edge of the board, you know, kind of going onto the board a little bit. That's fine. And then I want to make sure this is out of my way and then turn this over and down. And so I've got to watch it right here that it goes down tight into the little spine, the gap, and then just bone fold it all the way around. And honestly, this is the reason that it should dry, because otherwise it could pop. So I actually, maybe I will just pause the video and let it dry for 10 minutes because I feel like this is an important part. And if I don't get it down tight, it's just going to leave a puffy little spot and it's not going to look as good. Just work that down. Okay, and then do the other side. And I'm using that same piece of paper. I'm just like pulling it down a little bit each time. You can kind of see the sheen of glue. And of course, you don't have to, this is just printer paper that I've printed stuff on the other side. And it's going to go in the recycling anyway, so I use that. But you can also use a catalog or whatever you've got around. So that's scrap paper. So I'm folding it at the top here and then walking it down. And I usually just try to start in the middle and then find those edges and then try to put down the rest of it, because that way, if it's going to have excess material, it goes out. But I need it to get into these grooves. I need to make sure the book cloth goes in there. So I'm making sure that's tight, then I can bone fold this down. And then I just keep going back and checking that that's snug in there. Okay. So now is the time that you would put it under weight for 10 minutes. And so I think I am going to do that. I'm going to pause. I'm going to put this under weight, pause it, and come back so that then we can trim it. So I'll set that here. I'll take my brush, put that back in the little bit of water. I have like a little cup of water on the side here. So it's not very deep. It's like just the tip of the brush is in there, maybe ½ inch in. And then I'll just close this for now so it won't get a skin on it. And then I'll let this dry for 10 minutes and come back. So I'll pause the recording for a little bit. Be right back. All right. It's been probably less than 10, but I'm going to go ahead and do this. All right, so take it out from under the weight. Rearrange here. Okay, so now we need to do some measuring and trimming. So what I need to do is make this distance the same on both sides. So it's a little tricky because you've got to look at it. I mean, this one looks pretty good. I'm going to check it and see that it's the same all the way down. It's like almost 1 3/8. It's pretty close to that here. It's pretty straight. Yeah, and I could also take like a little scrap and I can just make a tick mark where the edge is. That's what I do often, is just instead of using a ruler, just kind of, you know, make a measurement. So that's bizarrely the same all the way down. So I guess that's what I'm going to do if I have enough material on this side. And I think I do, but you can see that this one is rough. It's got a little curve to it and it's got a rough, but all I need to do here, and I have to do it while it's bent, you know, while it's folded, because if I try to do it flat, I just can't see the edge of the board. So I'm gonna put this on like that. and make a tick mark here. And, ooh, it's close. Real close down at the bottom. It basically is this at the bottom. And that's okay. So I can actually just use the edge of this cloth, although let me make sure. So way down here, it's not, it curves back out again. So I'll connect those two. So the other side, I don't have to trim. But if I did, if, you know, you can either do that if it's straight, if it happens to be straight on one side, or you can make it some distance. You can make it 3/4 of an inch, or you can make it an inch, or whatever you want to do. Mine's like almost 1 3/8. And that's just because one side happened to be pretty straight. But you just got to make sure you've got enough, whatever choice you make, you have to make sure you got enough material on both sides. So sometimes I'll find the smallest area, like if it's really crooked, and that's happened, I'll just, whatever that is, I'll then transfer to the rest. So that's how you can do that. So the side I've got to trim, I'll put the ruler, and I'm going to put my knife in, and I'm kind of cutting inside the mark, just a little bit inside of it. And I'm just going to do a couple of cuts too. I'm kind of cutting into the material. I can feel that I'm cutting the board a little bit, but that's fine. Just a tiny bit. And then I'm going over the top with my knife. So where I stopped here, I'm just kind of bringing it over, and then I'll kind of trim down inside. And that doesn't have to be perfectly straight, so don't worry too much. And then we're going to peel that. So I'm going to do it on the other side too. So where I stopped here, I just slide my knife over the top and down the back on the inside. And then I'm going to peel that up. And it might pull up some material. And in fact, if anything, you want it to pull up a little bit of material, because you have a paper back cloth, and even this one's leaving a little bit of the starch. You want to make sure that your paper isn't on the board, because that can show when you put your other paper down. So make sure that white paper isn't stuck down. Go ahead and peel it. And if you have to peel up a little bit of the board, that's okay. Not deep, but just like one layer is fine. And I'll show you, like if you peel up some board, you can actually put it back down with your bone folder. So you just take your bone folder and just burnish that back down. Okay, oops. All right, so then you've got it even on both sides. And now we can put the covers on. Let me make sure, sometimes I forget the order. Yeah. We can go ahead and put the lining on. Although no, you know what, let's do the cloth. I mean, sorry, let's do the paper, and then we'll do the cloth on the inside to that width, whatever that is. Okay, so we're gonna glue this up. I'm gonna kind of tell you what we do before I do it. I'm gonna glue this up, glue this piece of paper. I'll put it on a scrap and I'll glue it completely. And then I'm gonna barely overlap the book cloth with it. Just a little bit. And then I'm gonna lay it down. I'll work that inset down right here that's gonna be under it. And then I will miter the corners and do my turn-ins. But I'm using the paper to just barely overlap the book cloth. So you can, if you need to, go ahead and make a mark for the distance that you're gonna cover. So sometimes, especially the first time you're doing it. So let's say you wanna do a 1/16 of an inch. You can just make a tick mark. And then when you're gonna put your paper down over the cloth, you can just cover that little mark with the paper. So I made these two little tick marks here that you can see on the cloth there. And then when I glue this up, I'll just cover them. Just cover them like that. And that'll be how I know. That's a nice thing to do. And actually, I'm just gonna do it on both sides. I'll go ahead and make my marks. And I'm doing it light, but not too light. I mean, I want to be able to see them because I am going to cover them up. Okay, so now I can do both. All right, so gluing this up. So this is probably the biggest gluing that we've done so far, gluing up a whole sheet like this. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, we did. We covered for the accordions. So this is my old glue sheet. I'm gonna fold this up and throw it in the recycling because it's too messy. So you'll probably need a full sheet for each one here. So I'm gonna put this here. I'm gonna set my board kind of to the side here. But I know that's where it's gonna go. This is where I'm gonna put this one. So I kind of need to know this is where what I'm gonna do with it. Okay, so again, so I have my brush back in the water. I'm gonna, now it has a lot of glue on it, or you know, a lot more glue on it than it did. That's a lot of water. Probably tap it out a little bit more before I bring it over. Squeeze it, because you just really don't want water on your paper because it causes problems. So squeeze it out really well. And then now I want a pretty good amount of glue because I'm going to glue this entire sheet. So I start in the center and I just glue. And then once I get most of it done, I can switch my fingers, hold it down in the center. That's it. Now I just want to move this away. Actually, I'm going to fold it up. And then here, okay, so you can see the grain is very strong because the grain's running like this, so it's going to curve like that. And now I want to put this down. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to overlap those two little marks and also try to center it head and tail, you know, somewhat. So as soon as those disappear underneath, I'm going to go ahead and press it down. And that's what I'm going to work on first, is that little area where I overlapped it. So I'm just pushing straight down, making sure it's glued. And then I can walk it out to the rest. So I'm also going to try to find that inset. There it is. And take a second and find it. And I'm not going to go too wild with it yet as far as making sure it's in the spot, but I do want to find it so that I can make sure I have enough paper to go in there. So I go ahead and work it down. And then come all the way out like that. Go ahead and use the bone folder. And now I got a miter, and I might have to re-glue, but I'm going to try not to. So then I'm going to do my little miter. So I fold the corner and I have my scissors, fold the corner and then snip it here. And then I'll do the other one. And I've got a kind of an excess of paper here because I did sort of a big distance for the book cloth. So I have like a lot of paper out here, but it's fine. No problem. So now I'm going to do my turn in. Head and tail, and then edge. And it looks like I might need to add some glue because it's dry. A little bit of glue here. Since I've already folded this one down, I'm going to go ahead and push that. Yeah, this is dry, but I'm not going to worry about it right here. I'll just bone fold it hard. But here, I got to re-glue that. So I'll grab another sheet. I need to glue this. It's just too dry. No big deal. Just do it like that. And then I'll do the other one when I do the 4-edge turn in. Just make sure that it's out of your way when you're working on the book, because that's such an easy thing to do, is just to leave it there. But your newsprint or whatever it is will stick to the book, and you don't want that because then it looks really messy. So I always just take a second and move that trash paper. Okay, and I'm doing the little miter tuck right here at the corners, that little roll, you can do it with the roll with the bone folder, but I'm doing it just because I have a straight bone folder. I'm just doing that. And then I'll bring this back, and I'm just looking, I kind of looked at the paper to figure out where it was already glued, and because I just like to use that sparingly. And then I glue this like that, and then fold it in. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, but that one won't have, and I think I'll just let it, if you don't need to watch it, you can forward through it, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. Just so you can see. If you want to just do it truly along with me, you can. Okay, so that seemed all right. So we'll go ahead and do, sometimes I'll do like a little tap on the corner just to knock those corners down. Okay. All right, so this one I can use for my end if I need, for those little turn-ins if I need that, but I need a full clean sheet for gluing this one. So again, just going to glue this up completely. It's a lot of space, and it's going to just dry, especially with air conditioning and things. It's going to, even though it doesn't feel dry in Florida, it's also the heat sometimes makes it feel, or makes it dry faster. I don't know. Okay. All right. And again, pull it towards me a little bit. I'm just going to barely overlap those marks. That. Try to center it head and tail. And again, we've got an excess of material, so you're probably, well, at least I do, because I have a pretty large space for my book cloth. And then miter the corner. I actually think I'm working a little bit faster this time, so I might not dry. And I'm trimming. So again, the miter is the little divot that it makes. And then I cut outside of that at a 45. And then I can do that little turn-in trick and work on the top with my thumb while the bottom's folded against the tabletop. So I didn't need to re-glue because I'm actually working just slightly faster than I did. Maybe I used a little more glue that time than I did, trying to, you know, be sparing with it, because it's really better to use less and have to re-glue than to over glue it, because it's so messy. Yeah, I think that's okay. It feels wet, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it. And that's that. Okay. And now we've got to put the lining of the book cloth on. So something's happening with mine because I had that excess of material where I don't like that little corner. So I'm going to actually just cut that off and peel it off. So you can use a ruler if you want. I'm also almost going to like just connect those lines. And I don't really care so much if it's perfectly straight. I just don't want that corner there. So if you have an interior or something that's going on that you're just like, ugh, that looks bad, go ahead and do that little peel. And that just makes it rectangle all the way around. A lot of times I'll just do it without a ruler. I'll just connect it like that, because I don't
I don't really want it or care that it's perfectly straight because I'm not a machine and this is a machine made book. So I don't know. I just kind of, that's my deal. I want it to be done and I want it to be straight-ish, but I'm not going to use a ruler every time I make a cut like that. This is the side that the book's going to go down on, I think. No, this is the cover, so it's a light color paper. So. But, you know, a little bumper like that, I'm just going to foam fold it. I've already got a problem right there with where I cut too deep. Okay, so now we need to cut the book cloth. So what we want to do is, what I usually do is try to match it to the width of the book cloth on the inside like that. So we can just, I'm putting it again, if you see what I'm doing, I'm kind of trying to leave it overlapping here. I'm just going to make a tick mark right there. Tick mark here. And then I'll do the same thing on the bottom. I'll just slide it up. And I almost can push the cloth against the edge of the paper. And then I'll just make another tick mark here. And then when I cut that, so I'm going to connect those two and cut it, I will cut inside that mark, because when we glue this up, it could stretch because the grain's running like this, and it's going to stretch. If it stretches, it's going to go that way. So I'm going to cut inside that mark just a little bit, just like I can just see the full mark, and I'm just going to cut that off like this. Okay. And then for the height, I could try to match it to this. Let's see if I go ahead and kind of lay that down, what that would look like. Yeah, I could do that. I could match it to that height, or I could even go a little bit taller with it. But why not? Why not just match it to this? And then when I lay it down, I can just line it up with that, you know? So this is 5 3/4, I think, or is it 5 1/2? It's 5 1/2. So I'm just checking the height. And so I'm going to cut this to 5 1/2. So 5 1/2. Okay, little scrap pieces. All right. So now this is going to go down here. So this is also going to pull in slightly because it's going to get worked down into that groove, but that should look pretty good. So let's go ahead and glue that up and glue that down. So I can use this piece. Just going to glue it completely up. And then I'll lay it down. And really, I've got the guides, which is the paper on each side, and then I'm just trying to center it head and tail. And then when I pull it in, you're really going to see it kind of suck in on the side, and that's fine. That's what we want. So I'm more worried, again, about the center having enough material. So I'm going to work on that first, and then I'll go back to the outside. So I am bone folding that. If I see a little excess of glue, I'll just touch it, kind of dab it off. So I'm like working it up against the fold, the side of the board. And then I can like, sometimes I'll do it kind of at the same time. I'll walk it down, use my fingertip. It's harder to do on this side. Okay,
So now we've got the lining in there. And then the last two things we've got to do is put down the end sheet or the paste down. And then we've got to put down the tunnel book itself on this side. So we'll be gluing that up together. I think I'm going to stop and let this dry under weight for a few minutes. I've done a lot of gluing, so I kind of want it to relax before I get to these last two steps. So I'm going to put a board. I probably need to go get another board because I don't have one that's big enough. Or maybe I could just use the weight on one side. I'm just trying to restrict the drying more than I'm trying to like use the weight to apply any pressure. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just trying to restrict the drying. And again, like I didn't put a piece of wax paper down because I don't have a lot of excess glue showing. But if you do, if you see glue, just make sure you put a piece of wax paper down. I'll just do it on this side too. And I'm gonna let that dry for maybe 10 minutes. And for real, this time I think I am gonna do 10 minutes. And then same deal, I'll put my brush in water, close my glue, and I'm gonna just leave this under weight for 10 minutes or so while, and everything's ready. I just need to let that dry. Okay, so I'll be back. Okay, we're back. And we're gonna take this out from under weight. Paper. I just hold on to that wax paper and reuse it. Unless it got really messy with glue, I would just keep reusing that. All right, so this is the cover. This is still pretty damp. I can feel it's cool, but it's not completely dry. Completely dry, it's gonna probably take at least a couple hours, if not overnight. But this is, I'm just kind of checking around to make sure everything looks glued down. If I see anything sticking up, I'll just kind of bone fold it down since it still feels damp. Okay, all right. So we'll go ahead and put the paste down first. So we're just gonna glue this up. I'm looking at the side to see which is the smooth. I think this is the smooth side. So that's the side I'm gonna glue. And then I'll put it here. So go ahead. This is the front cover. So that's where the paste down is going to go. So I'll take one of my sheets, something stapled together, and glue this up. So again, I need to wring out my brush. So this time I'm going to make sure I squeeze the water out first so I have less water when I bring it over. And this cloth is getting damp now because I've done it a few times. Okay, sorry, shaking the camera. Now, glue this up completely. And again, you can strongly see the grain direction. And that's fine. So I'm going to turn it like this, just so I can see better. And I just want to center it in this space. So I just kind of set it down where I think it should go, and then I can slide it around a little bit as needed. I just keep checking and making sure that it looks pretty straight. And again, this depends if your sheet of paper isn't straight, it's not going to look straight. I'm not sure that's completely square, but it's okay. And then I just bone fold it down. And again, if you have a regular bone folder, you might want to take a sheet of paper and put that on top just to be sure that you don't burnish, accidentally burnish and make sheen, like a little shiny spot on the surface of the paper. You do want to work it down tight. Okay, so that's that. And you also can look at the edges of the cloth that we cut. This is stretched up a little bit taller, but maybe it wasn't cut exactly, who knows. But it's close, it's good. All right, so now this next bit is a little bit difficult because we've got to glue. We want to put the tunnel book centered just like we did here. We want to put the tunnel book in place across from it in the center of that space. So we're going to glue that up. So how are we going to do this? So this is a little bit tricky. You need to have a piece of paper that is the width of this space. So this is 6. So maybe a little bit less than 6 in width. So you can just take your little scrap piece. I'm going to cut it like this. I'm going to cut a 6, and I'm going to cut inside that. I'm not going to cut it at 6. I'm going to cut it a little bit smaller. So there's the line for 6, and I'm coming in almost 1/4 inch. And I'm going to cut that off. So that's what I'm going to put inside. And then I'm going to cut 2 little strips to put on the outside, and I'll show you what I'm talking about in just a second. So this is my little setup for gluing this. Now this is hard to do because it's springy. So it's gonna, you know, it's not as easy to glue as other things. So I'm gonna put that piece of paper inside like that. And then I'm gonna put 2 little pieces on the outside like this, inside that fold. And if you're a good gluer, this really shouldn't be an issue, but just to be safe, that's why I'm doing those little pieces on the outside. So when I glue this, I'm actually going to kind of hold it down. Like I pushed down and I'm kind of holding it with my pinky and my forefinger on my left hand to do this. So I'm going to just start doing it. And I'm going to glue that completely up. And I just do it the same way. I start in the center, glue out. And this way, if I use those little scrap pieces on the side, I am not going to accidentally get glue. This one fell out. Not going to accidentally get glue on the concertina, which is what I'm trying to avoid. And in the center there, it's hard to glue because there's not any paper. It's hollow because we cut, you know, I cut those circles out. So there's nothing there. So it's just very flexible and bouncy. And so this is hard to do. So my pieces are starting to fall away, and that's okay because I've gotten most of it glued. Okay, and then I've got to take this piece of paper out without getting glue everywhere. So I kind of just put my hand inside and then just quick pull it out. It's like a magic trick. All right, so now I'm ready to put this down. And I'm going to, that's why I usually practice it before, so I can see where I'm going with it. And I'm just really, you can see you're looking and you're trying to center it in the space, just like you did with the other one. And then when you get it where you want it, you can just press down. And then there's no way to do this except to put the bone folder inside. You have to kind of lift it up and open it. Here's where I'm bone folding, right there, pushing against the edge. Pushing against the edge here on the inside, and just kind of you can get in there. It's a, you know, it's open enough. It's like a couple of inches because that's what the fold is. Those 2 1-inch panels, or, you know, the concertina. So you've got room for your hand. So you just work that down. And then you want to come in and bone fold out here. And I got a little bit of glue on there, so I'll just take a second and wipe that off. Bone fold out at the edge here, right here. And on this side, push it this way. Bone fold it. Okay. And so, you know, here's the thing is, how do you keep this under weight? So if you have a book, I mean, actually this, I have this weight, and I think I'm going to put that on there on the inside because it fits. So anything you have that will just help restrict it, that's what you want to use as it dries. So I'm just going to use that weight that I have. If you have a book that's wide enough that can fit in there, a little less than 6 inches wide, just put that in there to hold it down. And then on this side, I'm going to do the same thing I was doing earlier. So you can see like where it got wet with this paper, it's starting to curl up. I don't know if you can see that, but it's springy right here because of the wet paper here is pulling it. So I am going to put some weight on it to restrict it. This is my little tape thing. And I might even grab like this little box and put that on there, and then put because the weight is good. I don't need to do anything there. So that just needs to stay under weight, and then your tunnel book will be ready in a couple of hours. Just give it a couple of hours and you should be all right. And then, yeah, I'll show this when I show the group of examples. When this one's done, I'll add this to the group of examples so you can see the finished, and I'll add these labels or whatever I'm going to do with that. Okay, so that's the tunnel book. That's how you put that together. And then I'll show you guys some examples of student work from UF students from the past, their tunnel books. Okay, all right, thanks.